This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Hello, I'm Phil McKinney. Before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to let you know that we are taking a few weeks away from the studio to work on a whole new batch of shows. In the meantime, we are reaching back into the 14-year archive and bringing you some of our most popular shows from the past. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Killer Innovations Podcast. Now, no doubt you probably thought I'd either died, fallen off a cliff, or had totally given up on producing any new podcast. Well, you're wrong. Recently, on October 31st, I announced that I'll be retiring from Hewlett-Packard after 9 years as the Vice President and Chief Technology Officer for the Personal Systems Group. Now, I'll produce a podcast sometime after December 31st, which is my last day at HP, giving you more details about what I'm doing in the future. But one of the outcomes of this is to free up more time so that I can actually do more things like the podcast. So, what is today's podcast on? One of the common emails I get is asking about what are the unique skill sets needed for innovation leadership. So we all kind of, I think, have a good recollection or a good set of lists in our head about what are good leadership skills. But what are the unique ones that you need in order to be a true innovation leadership capabilities? What are the skills you need to have? So first off, let's kind of put together a list of what I think some of the skills are for just good general leadership. And this applies across all organizations, whether you're a small organization, you're a large organization. These leadership skills apply across the board. Those include, number one for me, integrity. You need to be able to trust the people you're working with. You need to be able to trust them with being able to complete tasks, look out for the best interest of the team, the best interest for the overall organization. Integrity is number one for me. Next is anybody providing a leadership role needs to be able to put together the vision and strategy. Team members are looking to the leaders to be able to communicate what that vision and strategy is. So you need to have that mindset, your ability to constantly look at longer range beyond where the team members are currently operating at, and then being able to roll that back in so they can see where the path you're going is headed. So therefore, they can get into that support role. They can get excited about that, following you as a leader, that there's a direction, there's a vision behind what it is they're doing. Third, communication. And for me, for some reason, communication is one of those skills that is just very hard to find. I come across a lot of people who have absolutely phenomenal technical skills, phenomenal skills around being able to design and write code or create products. Where they suffer and their career suffers significantly is their lack of communication skills, their ability to tell the story, make the pitch, share and convince others to join their dream. So communication skills becomes critical. Next is relationships. If you're going to be a leader, you need to be a relationship person. You need to be able to interact and build relationships and truly have concern and interest in other people's lives. What it is it that motivates them? What is it that makes them tick? What is it that potentially is distracting them outside of the work world? And how could you help to get them so that their head is focused, their head is in the game every day? Next is persuasion. You got a vision. You got a dream. As a leader, you got to persuade people to leave what they're doing now and hitch their wagon to you, following you and being able to achieve your vision. You've got to have that skill of persuasion. You've got to be able to draw them to you and be able to convince them that what you've got for them is better than what they've got currently going on. Next is adaptability and flexibility. There's nothing worse than being a leader who's rigid, because it's no longer about teamwork. It's about simply some leader acting as a dictator and everybody being lockstep with them. So as a leader, you've got to be adaptable and you've got to be flexible. Next is teamwork. Do you and can you really operate as a leader of a team? Can you stitch together and put together the right team? Now, here's the key when putting together the team, at least from my perspective, is you do not want everybody in the team to be just like you. You need diversity. You need diversity of opinions. You need diversities of backgrounds. You need diversity of capabilities. You need a wide diversity, and the wider the diversity I found, the better the team and the better the output. Now, if you're going to be a leader, the next one is you need to be able to coach and develop your team. Don't look for people who are already at the high end of their careers. Find those young and upcoming people within your organization, or go hire them from the universities, or bringing in interns. But if you do that, you need to be able and be willing to coach them and develop them. Just don't drop them into the deep end of the pool and watch them flounder. Work with them. Help them really develop that skill set. The benefit of this is the fact that you get to provide them with the development and the skills they need, and you're not unteaching bad skills that they've learned someplace else. Next, decision making. For some reason, leaders lack, really, I would call, the guts to make the call. What you get paid the salary for. Sitting around and doing voting and trying to drive consensus is just simply a cop-out. You're the leader. Make the call. If you're going to take a leadership role, you've got to get comfortable making the call and recognizing that, guess what? Some of the calls you make may be wrong. You may be totally off the mark, and that's okay. If you're wrong, catch it early, change and adjust, and move on. But you've got to make the call. Sitting around and not making the call just hurts the organization and hurts any progress you can have. And then last, and this is probably the one skill that I probably struggle with, is planning and organizing. You know, I'm kind of that idea guy. I can go out and I can come up with the great ideas and motivate teams and get out there and really communicate the message. Sitting at my desk and doing the meticulous planning and doing the meticulous organizing in order to make it happen is not a skill that I really have in my quiver. So what do? I hire people that work on my team who do that very, very well. So this basic list that we just went through was the leadership skills, just the base leadership skills that everybody needs in order to be a successful leader within the organization. And that doesn't matter whether you're the leader of the shipping department or you're the leader of a large organization. So what's different? What skills do you need differently to truly be an innovation leader, to have that innovation leadership skills that are critical to really drive the innovation agenda within an organization? Couple things. Innovation leadership means taking risks. In a lot of leadership roles, it's about avoiding risks. Don't take risks. Don't make sure there's no downside. Make sure there's only upside. And so a lot of core leadership skills are built around, or leadership decision-making processes around, reducing or eliminating risks. In the case of innovation leadership, it means taking the risks. You have to take the risks. You have to get comfortable with the fact that 9 out of 10 actions you're going to take are going to fail. We've been trained in all of our leadership training and our management training and in organizations that if you have a failure, that, oh my God, that ruins your career. In the case of innovation leadership skills, you need to get comfortable with it being flipped. 9 out of 10 decisions you make, 9 out of 10 actions and programs and activities you start will end in failure. They'll end up in a pile of rubble, smoke coming out of it, right? You got to get comfortable with that. The other is, if you're in providing an innovation leadership role, is you need to keep looking for new opportunities and threats. Leadership skills in the core organization really is about stability and moving forward and just kind of staying within your bubble. In the case of innovation, you're constantly head up, you're looking out across the horizon, and you're looking for those new opportunities. You're also looking for threats, not threats to your programs, threats to your organization, threats to your industry, threats to your geography, anything that has a potential one to be a significant impact to your organization, but also those threats become opportunities, things that you can then innovate around in order to get a new leadership position for your organization. So innovation leaders are constantly looking around for these new opportunities and these new threats. Now, next is innovation is about change. Stability is the death of innovation. It's always about constant change. There's constant change in the new things you're doing. There's constant change that your competitors are doing. It's about change. Innovation leadership is about fostering a culture where change is expected.
We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
Innovation leadership is about fostering a culture where change is expected. It's not a surprise, right? Now, you notice I didn't say that it's stress-free. Change is always stressful in an organization. Change is stressful for the individuals that are impacted. But set that expectation in the culture that change is expected, that it will come, and that we will react to it. Innovation, just core to its just very nature, is about change. Now, the next one that I want to share with you is one that kind of goes a little bit counter to the list we just went through before, where we went through all the different leadership skills. Now, this one, don't rest on the traditional management and leadership techniques, right? We tend to like to get comfortable with a set of process and a set of rules, and this is the way it always operates, right? In the case of innovation, every situation is different, right? If you're innovating, you're creating something new, and by nature, then you have to create everything around it as new, whether that be processes or techniques. You have to go invent everything around it. And once you get that one program done and you go off and do the next program, guess what? You're doing it again. This includes management and leadership techniques. You need to find and invent, literally, the way you manage and the way you do leadership. You can't sit back and just use the textbook methods. I've just found that those don't work. And every program, every project, every team requires its own little tweaks and changes to the leadership techniques in order to make that team successful. Now next, innovators by nature are optimists, or you at least should be an optimist. If you're a pessimist, you probably shouldn't be in the innovation game. Innovation is about being an optimist. If you are an optimist, then show it in your leadership style. Don't be the doom and gloom person walking around going, oh my God, the sky's falling. You need to be the motivator. You need to be the optimist. You need to convince and convey both to the team members and to the executive leadership team an optimistic view of the future, where things are going, where things are going to go. Now, you can't be kind of, it's always sunny and rose-colored glasses. You've got to have a realistic view. But by nature, innovation is about progress. Innovation is about winning. Innovation is about achievement. That, by nature, has an optimistic feel to it. You need to have that in your leadership style. And if you work for somebody that is supposed to be the innovation leader and they're a pessimist, good luck. Now, last but not least is innovators cut through the crap. There's a lot of fluff, there's a lot of BS that goes around in every organization and in every industry. Innovators, you need to be able to look and cut through the crap and get to the real core. One of the keys here is you've got to be willing to step in and stop the corporate game playing. The passive aggressive, the little turf battle issues that come up within an organization or even within teams. Innovators is about making progress. If you're spending your time doing the internal BS stuff, you're not achieving what's ultimately going to have the impact on the organization. You need to be able to yell BS, raise your hand, stop it, kill it, move on. And this, by doing this and doing this early and doing this often in any program as an innovation leader, team members will flock to you because nobody wants to play the internal politic game. They want to build something. They want to have impact. They want to change the world. And the more time you spend battling the internal BS, the less you have that ability to go out and change the world. So, innovators by nature cut through the crap. So I'm going to go through this and summarize it really quick for you. So again, these are the skill sets that are specific to being an innovation leader. 1, innovation leadership means taking risks. 2, innovation leadership is about constantly looking for new opportunities and threats. There is zero ability to stand still and be comfortable with where you're at. You're always looking for the next thing. Innovation is about change. You need to foster a culture where change is expected. Next, don't rest on traditional management and leadership techniques. Every situation is different, and therefore, management and leadership techniques need to be tweaked and changed. Next, innovators are optimists, and show it in your leadership style. Show it in your communication style. And last, innovators cut through the crap. Don't let the internal BS bog you down. Stop it, kill it, prevent it, minimize it, and allow your teams to be focused on changing the world. So, hopefully that was helpful to you. It's an answer to a couple of emails that I've gotten. And again, I'm looking forward to getting back and producing more podcasts for you over the next coming weeks as I finally get myself unraveled from my day job. So, in closing, let's connect. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, Google+, you name it, I'm on it. Let's connect if we're not already connected. If we do connect, drop me a note and let me know, okay? I get a lot of requests, for instance, on LinkedIn from people who don't say anything. They just offer a connection, and I tend to decline those. But if you want to connect with me, I'm more than willing to connect. Would love to connect with you in whatever social network means you want. I'm obviously on Twitter and post there quite regularly so that you can keep up with what I'm doing. Drop me a note. I know it's been a while since I've done the podcast. I'm interested in getting your thoughts and your feedback and ideas for future shows. I'm going to be putting the shows out on a much more regular basis going forward now. So drop me a note. The email address is feedback@philmckinney.com, or you can go over to philmckinney.com and click on the contact page and just drop me a note that way also. If you haven't been over, the philmckinney.com site has gone through a pretty massive redesign to make the content easier to find. It's got a whole new graphic look for it. I contracted with a small but a very, very creative firm here in Silicon Valley called Pure Matter, and they've led the redesign of the site. It launched, I'm going to say, like the third week of October. So if you haven't been over there to look at it, stop by. Now, if you haven't heard, and I would be surprised if you haven't heard, but my first book, Beyond the Obvious, will hit store shelves on February 7th. So for those of you who've been regular listeners of the podcast over the last 6+ years, and have been constantly asking me about when the book is coming out, the book is done, coming out February 7th. It's being published by Hyperion. It will come out in hardback. It'll be available worldwide in English, and there'll be other language translations coming following that, and I'll have an update on that soon. Most of the book is dedicated to the killer questions, and in fact, the title of the book is Beyond the Obvious, Killer Questions That Spark Game-Changing Innovation. We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. So more than half of the book is dedicated to the killer questions. And for each question, there's stories and examples, etc. There's a chapter in the book that covers exactly how to run a Killer Innovations workshop. There's a chapter on the corporate antibodies. So it's a pretty complete collection of the bits and pieces from the podcast, from the blog, and entirely new material. And in fact, I would probably say roughly about half of the questions in the book have not been yet covered in the podcast or on the blog site. So I would say I'd probably say about half of the questions have never been covered. So I would encourage you to go over. There's more information about the book. The best way is to go over to beyondtheobvious.com, and that's the landing page. There'll be a new site that goes on to that URL as we get closer to the book launch, but you can go there now and see information, and you can actually pre-order the book. There will be both print versions and digital versions and audio versions, all the things that you would normally associate with the book publishing industry these days. So, again, I'd love to have you go over there and take a look and pre-buy the book and read it and enjoy it. There'll be other materials that we'll be releasing. If you go over to Beyond the Obvious and you submit your email address, then you'll get notified about free chapters that will be made available starting here in another 3 or 4 weeks for the book. So again, if you go over to Beyond the Obvious, submit your email address, and you'll get an email notification with links to free chapters and early release material from the book so that you'll have a chance to take a look at that before the book actually hits the store shelves.
This week, we are reaching deep into the archive and bringing you one of our most downloaded shows. Enjoy. But recently, I was asked by a friend of mine, Brian Kramer. He's the founder of Pure Matter. Pure Matter is a marketing, brand, interactive media company based here in Silicon Valley. They do a lot of work for the companies here in the Valley. He holds his annual employee offsite this time of year. And Brian had asked me to come in and do kind of a lunchtime motivational talk about innovation and leadership. So I said, sure, I'd come on over. And we did it over at the Computer History Museum, which is a phenomenal facility. If you ever come out here to Silicon Valley, you have to go to the Computer History Museum. So this is his annual offsite. He asked me to come in and talk during the lunchtime. So I was coming in to do about a 1-hour speech. I actually came in at 59 minutes and 40 seconds. Now, how's that for timing? Now, rather than me just cranking and putting out the 1-hour speech, I'm going to chop it down into maybe 10 or 15-minute kind of chunks and put it out as the podcast. So what you've got here in this episode of the Killer Innovations podcast is about a 15-minute segment. It's the introductory part, kind of lays the groundwork on some new work that I'm doing around how do you get people to think beyond the obvious, think beyond the things that are just kind of in our face. And how do you really unleash people's ability to not accept the standard answer or the standard assumptions about your business, your industry, your products, your services, or your customers, but how do you go beyond that? So sit down, have a good listen, get your notebooks out because you'll want to take some notes, and hopefully you'll enjoy this issue of the Clear Innovations podcast. The challenges on the creativity innovation side does not change based on scale. It's the exact same problem whether you're a 5-person working out of a garage or you're HP with 320,000 employees in 171 countries. The problems are the exact same. The scale of the problem may be a little different, but when it comes to being able to operate and innovate simultaneously, that becomes the challenge. The other thing that I've identified over the years also is that there's a lack of confidence for people to really be able to step out and really express themselves creatively. Now, in your case, you are what I would classify as a creative business, so yours is a little bit different. For you, the challenge is you're running into customers who aren't that creative, who tend to want to play it fairly conservative. And so how do you help the customers get the confidence on the creative side, which is another part of the challenge. So hopefully some of this that I'll share. One of the things, I'm also into photography, but of course, see, Brian and I are polar opposites. He's a Nikon guy, I'm a Canon guy, so we always get into this. We always get into this discussion. But one of the things I collect is images of what I would call like obvious signs. Things that you read them, they're kind of like, okay, why would you even put the sign up? Right? I've got one sign, one image. I should have left it in here. I took it just to trim the presentation, but I got one sign that says, literally there's a
solid granite wall. The sign is like 6 inches from the wall, and it says road ends here. Or the other sign that says one way, and the arrows are pointing both directions. How does that work? Right? So part of what I'm going to focus on is how do you get beyond the obvious? Part of the challenge with a lot of organizations is we kind of get caught in this, we always done it this way. Here are kind of the rules and the assumptions of how we operate. Clients, in my case, my clients are other parts of HP where I'm trying to help them innovate within their products. Oh, no. We've always done laptops this way, and we've always done phones this way, and we've always operate. And the question is how do you push people to get comfortable to step beyond the obvious, to do the next thing? So, and the way I argue it is doing the obvious is really doing the same thing over and over and over again, which means you're boring, which means you're average. And who wants to be average? Average is not success in today's economic condition. You just kind of blend in. It's how do you stand out? How do you do something that's beyond what anybody else would expect, beyond what anybody else would anticipate? But the point is being average is not what will lead to that long-term success. It's not about, being like everybody else. And part of the challenge is we've all been taught conformity, right? When you're in school, what's the one thing you want to be? You want to be like everybody else, because if you stand out, guess what? You get pummeled by all the other kids in the classroom. And kids get taught this through the entire educational process. But then you get out into the work world, and being average just puts you right smack dab in the middle of the pack. So now you have to unlearn that conformity and really step out and go beyond being obvious. Now, this also plays out in the business world. How many people are familiar with army ants? So you're familiar with the army? Have you heard the army ant story? So army ants are great and highly efficient, but they're programmed to do one thing: follow the ant in front of them. And what will happen is if the lead ant falls back and finds the tail of an ant that's in its colony, it creates what we have here is what's called an ant mill. And these ants will literally do what they're programmed to do: follow the ant in front of you. Now, in most cases, in the case of an ant mill, those ants will literally walk themselves to death. It takes about 3 days, and you will wipe out the entire army ant colony. Now, how do you break the ant mill? So this little simulation will start over again so you can see it from the beginning. But the way an ant mill breaks, or how a colony survives, is you have a broken ant. One ant that doesn't know what it's supposed to do, which is follow the ant in front, and it goes, no, I want to go over here. And it breaks off from the ant mill, and what do all the other ants do? Follow that ant. And then all of a sudden that ant mill breaks apart and the colony survives. So the way the businesses need to survive is you need to have those broken ants. You need to have those ants who say, you know something, the rules of which I'm programmed to do, or the way we operate, I'm going to step out and I'm going to do something different. I'm going to break away. I'm going to help my clients break away, and therefore not get caught in the ant mill of whatever their industry is or what their organizational problems, challenges are, but how do you break away? So the rule number one is break the rules, right? Now this is a little, believe me, when I do this talk inside of HP, all the executives just kind of like have heart convulsions, right? Because having 320,000 employees running around in total anarchy is not a good thing, right? But you have to recognize what is it you can challenge and what is it you can't challenge. And we're going to walk through, I got a couple of quick little exercises I think you'll find interesting. Now, here's the other challenge inside of organizations. There's people inside of any organization that I call the corporate antibodies. So we all know what antibodies are, right? Those are the cells inside your body that attack any form of infection, anything that's kind of out of the norm. We have corporate antibodies. These are the people that come after any new idea. Something's going to disrupt the organization. Oh, no. We've tried that before. Oh, no, that's not going to work. Or, oh, that's not going to give us, in HP, the big one is, oh, that's not going to give us a big enough return on our investment, right? And so the challenge becomes then is that you've got to recognize that these antibodies exist. And in some cases, you're the antibody. You may not realize it. We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. you're the antibody. You may not realize it. It may be a facial expression. It may be in a rejection to somebody else's idea because it wasn't your idea, or it was your idea, but now they're pitching it differently, or it could be you just don't think it's going to work, but you don't even give it a fair hearing. I mean, I have to catch myself. I'm in the innovation space. I talk about innovation. I write about innovation. And I even have to catch myself from being the corporate antibody, because I literally get thousands of ideas a year pitched, looking for budget funding for me to support inside of an organization. And I even have to catch myself from being that corporate antibody, being that one that's going to say, you know something? That's not a good idea. We're going to go off and do something else. So the key is how do you catch yourself? And how do you make sure that you give a fair hearing to the ideas? And I'm sure we've all either have said or have heard any of the antibody statements. Like, oh, we've tried that before and it didn't work. Don't rock the boat. The market's not ready. This is one that always gets inside my organization. Oh, you'll never get approval, so don't even try. So you're throwing, cold water on somebody else's effort. You can't afford that, or it's not a new concept. The key here is recognizing that these antibodies exist and to think differently about, rather than just having random ideas, what work can you do up front about putting more thought behind an idea before you pitch it? And how do you pitch an idea? Now, you guys pitch ideas all the time to clients. In my organization, I have to teach people how to pitch. It's amazing how few people can really pitch an idea. And I will talk to you a little bit about how we do that. So going beyond the obvious requires that you got to think differently. You almost have to unlearn what it is you've learned in the past. We talked a little bit about schooling, and we kind of learned this conformity path that we're on, and you have to kind of unlearn that. So here's a little test. So what's half of 13? 6.5, right? Now, that's what we're taught in school, right? In fact, in the educational system, right, what I affectionately refer to as we are producing the world's greatest test takers. Because we're taught, give a question, provide the answer. But the fact is that we teach the kids in school today about, here's a test, calculate the answer, there's an answer, put the answer in on the test, and you're done. Now the challenge is when we get out in the real work world and we're challenged with a question or challenged with a problem, what are the odds that there's only one answer? Like 0, right? You have multiple choices, multiple approaches, multiple ideas you can bring to the table to solve that problem, right? So back to what's half of 13? 6.5. Well, that's one answer. What are other answers? Well, if you round, it could be 6 or 7. If I wrote the word out, like in this case, it's THIR, split it in half, TEN. Roman numeral 13 is 11 and 2. Roman numeral 13, you split it horizontally, is 8 and 8. Lots of possible answers. So rather than stopping at the first obvious answer, how do you make sure that you challenge yourself to go beyond that obvious answer and look at other possibilities? And then the challenge that you have then is you look at all those possible answers and then determine what's the best approach. And guess what? Be willing to be wrong. Now, in a case, at the same time, I have to kind of quantify this point with kids who are still in school. Don't experiment on your test, because that will not work out for you. But it is about preparing them for the work world. So every year, for instance, we bring in about 250, 300 interns for all of the Bay Area for us. In my organization, we'll average between 6 and 12 interns. And one of the things I see with these interns is they come in, and what they've been taught is that there's one correct answer. So any problem presented, there's one correct answer. So we purposely give them projects that don't have a single correct answer. And then we watch these poor interns work themselves into a frenzy trying to find the one correct answer. Because what we're trying to do is unteach them this problem of get to the answer, you're done, move on to the next problem, versus look. You have to be able to broaden that scope. You have to broaden what you're looking for. Another rule, for instance, is don't start a company in a recession, right? You got a job and the market's down, hold on to your job. Don't start your job in a recession. Every one of these companies started either in the Depression. In the case of HP, HP was actually started during the Depression, or in the downturn of the recession, such as Electronic Arts. So every one of these companies started by breaking the rule of when did you start. So the key here is break that, are these rules that everybody kind of, feels, oh, you got a job, hold on to your job, don't step out, don't take that risk. But here's people, here's individuals, Walt Disney and Bill and Dave and General Electric and, et cetera. But you look at any of these up here and you think about what would have happened if someone at probably the worst time in the market stepped out and broke the rule. So it's really not about having the answer. It's not about having that first answer. It's really about how do you get beyond the obvious. So the whole core of what I talk about and what I teach, both inside of my organization but also to other corporations, is really about asking questions. How do you ask questions to get beyond the obvious? How do you ask questions that cause you to reveal something or think about something that you'd never thought about? And it's built around this concept called killer questions. Killer questions are different from normal questions. Normal questions, you can ask a question and you come back with that single answer. Half of 13, 6.5, correct? Get an A on your test. But how do you ask questions that you sit there and you think about and you go, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm going to have to go and do some research before I can come back. That's a little bit why the logo has a double cloud in it, because it causes you to have to kind of cycle through it a few times before you can really think about it from the context of the questions you're being asked. The whole point here is that if you ask better questions get you better answers, better ideas, which then translates in to impact in the organization. Poorly worded questions get you poorly worded answers. Think about it from a brainstorming session, right? In most large organizations, the brainstorming session consists of some executive walking in and saying, hurry up, come up with a product idea. Okay, what the heck does that mean? Who's the customer? Do we have a target? What's the problem we're trying to solve? So now you get 10 of your best and brightest people to come into the brainstorming session. What's the quality of the ideas? Probably fairly weak. Why? Because when we're asked a question, just as we talked about half of 13, as soon as you answer the question, what do? You stop thinking about it. You stop looking.
You are listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.